Every lie begins with a heartbeat, a flicker of fear that turns into control.
This isn't just a story about deception. It's about the people who live inside the lie.
Every lie begins small. A harmless exaggeration. A white lie to make life smoother. But somewhere between the truth and the fiction, a line disappears. The liar feels the rush, the brief power of shaping reality. Psychologists call it the reward loop of deception. Dopamine fires. The lie sticks. Then comes another. And another. Soon, lying becomes survival. Frank Abagnale, posing as a pilot, a doctor, even a lawyer, once said, "People only see what they want to see." He knew the secret: confidence is camouflage. Every serial liar learns this language: how to look sincere, how to mimic empathy, how to make you believe them. Behind the charm, they're addicted to control. This film will enter their world, the boardrooms, the prisons, the confessions. We'll meet the liars who fooled governments, lovers, and entire nations. And we'll see what happens when the masks finally crack. Because in the end, a serial liar's greatest victim is themselves. Deception isn't just instinct, it's art. The serial liar studies people like a painter studies light. They learn micro-expressions, body language, tone shifts. Every reaction becomes data. They don't just tell lies, they build them. Layer by layer. Consider the case of Anna Delvey, the fake German heiress who conned New York's elite. She didn't forge documents or hack accounts. She weaponized confidence. She walked into five-star hotels, demanded luxury treatment, and everyone obeyed. Not because they believed in her money, but because they feared looking foolish if they didn't. That's the terrifying truth: lies often survive not because they're perfect, but because we want them to be true. A serial liar's greatest trick isn't their story, it's how they make you feel. Admired. Trusted. Special. You lower your guard. You stop questioning. And by the time you realize what's happening, they've already rewritten your reality. Every con has one purpose: to own your perception. Every lie depends on one thing: belief. But belief doesn't come from facts. It comes from emotion. The best liars don't give you proof, they give you a feeling. Take Frank Abagnale Jr., the young man who impersonated pilots, doctors, and lawyers before age 21. He didn't have credentials. He had confidence. He understood that when people see certainty, they stop asking questions. Psychologists call it truth bias, the human tendency to assume honesty until proven otherwise. Society runs on trust, and liars weaponize it. The same principle applies to online scams, fake charities, and political spin. People believe what they want to believe. The more a lie fits their hopes, fears, or biases, the more powerful it becomes. The serial liar doesn't just deceive others, they build a world where they are the author, the hero, and the god. And once they taste that kind of control, truth becomes irrelevant. Because if enough people believe your story, does it even matter if it's true? Some liars don't just tell stories, they live them. Meet Gillian Tate, who faked being a trauma survivor to gain sympathy and money. Her blog posts went viral. She was invited to speak at universities, praised as a survivor-turned-advocate. But every word was false. No abuse. No trauma. Just imagination and opportunity. Psychologists describe this as pseudologia fantastica, pathological lying so deep, the person starts believing their own fiction. Their false identity becomes armor, a shield against insecurity and pain. They rewrite their past until they can no longer tell what's real. Inside their mind, the truth is too ordinary. Too weak. So they create something better. Something cinematic. The danger? Once they start getting recognition, applause, or love for the lie, it becomes impossible to stop. Every compliment reinforces the illusion. And when exposure comes, as it always does, the fall is brutal. Because the serial liar doesn't just lose their credibility. They lose the only version of themselves they ever learned to love. Some of the most devastating lies aren't told for money, they're told for love. These liars don't want your wallet. They want your soul. Take Jodi Arias, whose obsessive romance with Travis Alexander began with devotion and ended in blood. Her lies began small, where she was, who she was with, what she was feeling. But when Travis tried to leave, the lies became walls. Excuses. Threats. Alibis. Psychologists say romantic liars often suffer from narcissistic delusion, an addiction to control disguised as affection. They create fantasy versions of themselves to keep their partners locked in emotional dependency. They promise forever, while rewriting every moment of reality to fit their illusion. When the mask slips, chaos follows. Love turns to obsession. Obsession turns to paranoia. And paranoia turns deadly. The serial liar in love doesn't fear being caught, they fear being abandoned. Because beneath the lies is an emptiness that truth could never fill. Lies aren't limited to love or survival, sometimes, they're the foundation of entire empires. Meet Elizabeth Holmes, founder of Theranos. A woman once hailed as Silicon Valley's next Steve Jobs. Investors poured in millions. Politicians endorsed her. The media called her a visionary. But the technology? It didn't work. Her company promised revolutionary blood tests using a single drop, but the machines were flawed, results falsified, and patients misdiagnosed. Holmes's story is a masterclass in strategic deception. She created a culture of silence, loyalty, and fear. Employees were told to believe, not question. Dissent was betrayal. Psychologists describe this as collective delusion, when the charisma of a leader infects those around them. A lie becomes corporate identity. The brilliance of such deception isn't in the fake product, it's in the narrative. The story of disruption, innovation, and power. When truth finally surfaced, Holmes's fall wasn't just her own, it shattered faith in an entire system built on trust and image. In the modern world, lies no longer need a face, just a signal. Behind glowing screens and perfect filters, the serial liar has found their paradise, the internet. Here, identity is fluid. With a few stolen photos and clever words, anyone can become anyone. Catfish scams, fake influencers, and false charity campaigns thrive because digital lies travel faster than truth. Take Simon Leviev, the Tinder swindler. He posed as a billionaire, flying women across countries, showering them with luxury, all funded by his previous victims. It was a carousel of deceit, each lie feeding the next. Experts call it the empathy hack, using emotion to override reason. The digital liar doesn't force you to trust them, they make you want to. They mirror your dreams, your loneliness, your hope. And when you fall hard, not just for the lie, but for the version of yourself that believed in it. Online, truth isn't fact. It's just what's most convincing. Deception isn't just personal, it's political. History is written by those who lie most convincingly. Governments, intelligence agencies, and world leaders have used misinformation as their sharpest weapon. The Iraq War began with a lie, weapons of mass destruction. It wasn't just a mistake, it was a crafted illusion. Officials presented photos, reports, and testimonies, all meant to justify a war the world wasn't ready for. Millions believed. Thousands died. This is strategic deception, the art of shaping public perception. A tool as old as power itself. From the CIA's covert propaganda during the Cold War to modern-day disinformation campaigns on social media, the battlefield has evolved, but the weapon hasn't. Psychologists call this the illusion of certainty, when people choose comforting lies over complex truths. The stronger the narrative, the less we see the manipulation behind it. And in that silence, the liar wins. Because the most dangerous lie is the one wrapped in a flag. Every lie has a price. Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's freedom, but the worst cost is human trust. When deception seeps into institutions, relationships, and governments, the fallout is psychological. The victims aren't just those deceived, it's everyone who learns not to believe anymore. Studies show that after exposure to major scandals, corporate, political, or personal, public faith in truth itself declines. People stop asking, "Is this a lie?" and start assuming everything is one. This is how liars win twice, first by deceiving, and then by poisoning belief itself. A former FBI profiler once said, "Lies don't destroy truth, they destroy the ability to recognize it." And when that happens, justice collapses. Because how can you punish deceit in a world that's forgotten what honesty feels like? In a way, the serial liar isn't just a manipulator, they're a mirror, reflecting what we're willing to believe, even when we shouldn't. To understand a serial liar, you must step into the void they fill. Control, that's their drug. The moment they realize that words can bend reality, they become architects of illusion. Dr. Paul Ekman, one of the world's leading deception researchers, describes it as a power feedback loop. Each successful lie creates a psychological high, releasing dopamine, reinforcing the habit. Over time, lying becomes reflex, as natural as breathing. But beneath that control lies fear. The fear of insignificance. The terror of being seen as ordinary. Every lie, no matter how small, builds a fortress around insecurity. Serial liars don't just manipulate people, they manipulate emotion. They study reactions, tears, anger, silence, and then shape their next move accordingly. Inside their mind, truth is just raw material, something to reshape, repurpose, reframe. Because control isn't about knowing the truth. It's about owning the narrative. There comes a moment when a serial liar can no longer tell where fiction ends and truth begins. Psychologists call it internalization, when repeated lies are rehearsed so often, they overwrite memory. The mind starts to protect the illusion. In therapy rooms and interrogation chambers, this moment is chilling. The liar swears they're innocent, their voice trembling with genuine conviction. Polygraphs fail because the brain isn't distinguishing between truth and story anymore. This is the final stage of deception, self-erasure. The liar becomes the lie. Forensic psychiatrists describe it as a form of identity collapse. The real self fades under the weight of the invented one. Every correction feels like an attack, every contradiction a threat to survival. By the time exposure comes, it's too late. They aren't faking anymore. They're defending their reality. Because when you live in a world of your own creation long enough, the truth becomes the intruder. Every lie ripples outward, touching lives the liar never even meets. The serial deceiver doesn't operate in isolation, their stories infect entire ecosystems of trust. Families fracture. Friendships collapse. Innocent people become collateral damage in someone else's performance. In investigative files, you'll find pages of destroyed reputations, coworkers fired, partners accused, and victims labeled unstable. Lies have fingerprints that can't be seen but can destroy careers, marriages, and lives. Dr. Bella DePaulo, a social psychologist, once said, "Lies are social weapons, and every use leaves a wound." The liar doesn't just manipulate, they rewrite the emotional fabric of those around them. For the victim, truth becomes slippery. They start to question their own memory, their sanity. Gaslighting isn't about making someone believe a lie, it's about making them doubt themselves. And that's the cruelest part of all. When the liar moves on, the victims stay behind, still trying to piece together what was real and what was never there. When serial liars are caught, their greatest performance begins: remorse. Tears fall, voices shake, hands tremble, but the show isn't for redemption, it's for control. True remorse demands empathy, something most chronic deceivers lack. Instead, they mimic emotion, learning the cues of guilt through observation. To the untrained eye, they seem sincere. But psychologists studying pathological liars note a chilling pattern: their sadness is rehearsed, their apologies perfectly timed, their words crafted to manipulate pity. In one courtroom study, offenders who faked remorse were twice as likely to receive lenient sentences. Judges, journalists, and even victims mistook performance for honesty. This is the final illusion, turning accountability into advantage. They understand that when people want to forgive, they stop questioning. and so the liar bends even the aftermath to their favor, rewriting their downfall into a redemption arc. But behind the tears and trembling lips, the mask never truly comes off. For over a century, humans have tried to build machines that can tell truth from deception. Polygraphs, fMRI scans, even AI-driven micro-expression analyzers, all promising to uncover the secret language of lies. But none of them are perfect. The polygraph, once hailed as the ultimate truth weapon, doesn't actually detect lies. It measures stress, heart rate, sweat, breathing. The problem? Liars learn calm. Psychopaths, in particular, show almost no physiological response to deceit. Their pulse stays steady. Their skin stays dry. Their voice never trembles. Modern neuroscience has advanced the hunt, mapping activity in the prefrontal cortex and amygdala, the regions tied to guilt and impulse control. But even with that, the mind of a seasoned liar can mimic neutrality. As one behavioral scientist put it, machines can detect the body's betrayal, but not the soul's. Technology keeps evolving, but so do the liars. Every new truth tool becomes another system to exploit. Because the best deceivers don't outsmart the machine. They outsmart the human who built it. In the end, the story of every liar ends the same way: silence. Not the kind born from guilt, but from exhaustion. Lies demand maintenance. They need constant feeding, adjusting, rewriting. Eventually, even the best deceiver runs out of breath. Detectives say they can always tell when that moment arrives. The shoulders drop, the eyes lose their spark. The performance collapses. For the first time, the truth feels lighter than the lie. But the scars remain, on those deceived, on the institutions that trusted, on the world that believed. Because lies don't vanish when the liar is gone, they echo, reshaping memory and rewriting history. And maybe that's the final lesson. Truth doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, beneath headlines, behind walls, inside those who still believe honesty matters. The serial liar's greatest failure isn't being exposed. It's realizing that even the most elaborate illusion cannot outlast time. Because truth, no matter how deeply buried, always finds its way to the surface.